everyone. Welcome back to Inside Dentistry, where we discuss everything you need to know as a foreign trained dentist, navigating the journey toward practicing in the US. I'm your host, Dr. Aster Vas, founder of the Dental Student Society, a community dedicated to supporting international dentists through their transition. Today's episode is extra special. Joining us is Dr. Lagreca, a seasoned dentist, mentor, a professor who has successfully navigated the challenges of transitioning into the US. She's passionate about guiding international students and has a wealth of knowledge to share. Dr. Lagreca, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we dive in, could you tell me or our listeners a little about your background and your journey to where you're from and where you are now?
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for the invitation, Dr. Vaz. I'm honored to be here and sharing a little bit of insights with this community that is so special and dear to my heart. I'm a foreign trained dentist, of course, but also I'm a dual dentist right now because I was both trained in Venezuela and in America. I came to the United States about 15 years ago, and I'm currently in Boston, Massachusetts, holding a position of an associate professor at Tufts University. I'm an adjunct professor at Nova. I work in private practice as a prosthodontist, and I'm the founder and CEO of the International Dentist, a community that takes care of mentoring and supporting international dentists in their career paths in the United States, whether it is they're interested on practice, research, teaching opportunities, or so on. We guide them, support them, and mentor them through the process until they basically are able to successfully achieve their goals.
That's incredible. Now, before we get into our main discussion, let me give our listeners and you a quick roadmap of our conversation today. First, we'll be diving into low-hanging fruits for success, the simple yet impactful steps international dentists can take to strengthen their application and get ahead in their journey. We'll touch on topics like continuing education, networking, shadowing, and smart application strategies. Then, in the second half, we'll shift gears and explore your transition from student to educator, what your journey was like, the challenges you faced, the role mentorship plays in supporting international dentists. So, getting started with something that resonates with so many of our listeners, finding those low hanging fruits, the easy wins that can make the journey smoother for international dentists. So, Dr. Lagreca, from your experience, what are some quick wins that international dentists should focus on during their application process?
Excellent. So that's actually a great question, and I thought about it for a while because, to be quite honest, they are not necessarily low-hanging fruits. Like in life, there are things that are naturally easy, like definitely there are opportunities that you can grab, just as you can imagine a low-hanging fruit will be. In this process, it's not necessarily as easy, but it truly depends on where somebody is in their path, right? So if someone is already just preparing for the application, has been here for long, and pretty much has resources around, there will be a lot of these fruits that I'm going to talk about. If somebody is in their country or is just arriving to the US, dealing with immigration, not knowing the language, these are all going to feel a little bit outreach. So it depends on where somebody's in their path. Certain things are going to feel more accessible than others. So I'm going to talk about specifically somebody who has been here for a little while, that understands the system, that knows the language, and has been somehow embedded in the system sufficiently to know that they're ready for an application cycle. So let's talk about the low-hanging fruits for that group, because there will be a little bit different than for others. So I hope that somebody at that stage has already completed their IMBDE or the MBDE exam, right? So this is kind of out of the equation. But if you're actually somebody that is not there, you should focus there. You should focus on your English and should focus on your IMBDE. That's truly all it is. For somebody that is being here, preparing for perhaps this application cycle for CAAPID, I hope that you have already contemplated the importance of letters of recommendation. And I think letters of recommendation is something that is often underestimated, and people believe those relationships could either be built very quickly, which is not true, and or it could be like created or fabricated. So in many cultures, we don't have recommendation letters. I'm talking particularly of the Latin culture. There is not, it's just a completely new thing. Like, so asking somebody who is from a different country or from a different culture to write you a recommendation letter might be to begin with a little bit odd. And then training them or teaching them how to write a letter will be something that you have to contemplate. So the low-hanging fruit there is to tackle the recommendation letters as early as possible. Don't wait until a month before your application. Like, this is something that if you think about it, how long does it take to ask for a recommendation letter? I always said at least a year. Why? Because you might need to develop certain relationships. So do not underestimate the power of every relationship that you have around you, as each of those might be contributing to your potential success, as you never know who is going to be in a position of offering you a letter. So that's really one that I think that everybody should focus on at any stage. Then regarding a school list. Do not assume that because CAAPID has a centralized application center where you have a program search and then you're able to kind of select your programs from there, do not assume that that's going to be sufficient. Track everything to the dot and try to be very organized. And that's something that is relatively easy right now because the search engine from CAAPID has improved and has a lot more information,
Yeah.
but still it's not customized. It's not customized to me, it's not customized to you. And we all have different priorities.
Yeah.
And one of the mistakes we make is believing that, okay, as soon as I'm eligible, like I have a TOEFL score, and if I have the requirements, done. I should apply to all of the schools I'm eligible for, and that's not necessarily true. So being a little bit more strategic on selection of schools is very important, and I think it's something that a lot of international dentists underestimate because they think all of schools are the same, and they're seeing this process as okay, advanced denting is the same everywhere, when it's actually not. Each school has different objectives, different missions. And with that in mind, I always recommend people to make a program list of their own, whether it is that they want to do it on Excel. I have mentees that have made Excel sheets, multiple colors, so many rows, like to the level of detail that is like a dream. I have others that prefer just doing it on their notebook or in their cell phone notes. Somewhere you have to be tracking what are the requirements for each school because they do change slightly each year. Not all of this or not all of them change, but schools might fine tune certain things about their application each year. And one good example, going back to letters of recommendation, is that some schools might change who do they want the recommendation letters from. Historically, most programs will ask for 3 letters. And they will say like one has to be from the dean, one has to be from a professor from school, and maybe another one either of your choice or somebody that knows you in the US. But that changes. Sometimes some schools might change the requirements. BU has other particularities about what they want from a letter, for example. Some other schools might accept in a given year an extra letter or two. So keep tracking of all those things because it's different school per school can be really challenging unless you keep yourself very organized. So do not assume that because you applied last year, you know exactly what it is. Make sure that you're refreshing that information, as I believe that's really one of the low-hanging fruits here. The more accurate you are in your application, the more competent as an applicant you're presenting yourself.
Yes. And Dr. Lagreca, from 2 points that you said, one was letter of recommendation. So if a person was asking the dentist for letter of recommendation, and is it okay to, sometimes there are a lot of people in the workplace and the doctor might miss out on the things that you did in the office.
Mhm.
So would your advice be where we could make a list of things that we did in that practice and maybe also give it to the dentist to just say that these are the things that we did in the practice? If you could maybe look into it when you're drafting a letter of recommendation. So what's your thought in that?
That's an excellent question, and I love your approximation to it. You actually have to coach people a little bit about what do you
Yeah.
want them to say about you. Because yes, let's say that this is the boss, right? You're working as a dental assistant or a dental hygienist, and they have seen yourself in certain environments,
Yeah.
but they might not know necessarily what is a piece that will contribute best to your application. Which is, by the way, not going to be that you show punctual to your job and then you're respectful and polite. Those are not necessarily the things that you want on your letter, or at least not the only ones that you want on your letter. So my suggestion is whenever you make the ask, the
Mm-hmm.
timeline should be like within 2, 3 months before the application opens, you make the ask, or at least hopefully at that stage, that person knows what your plans are. I hope that that's the case. So if they know, maybe around January or so, you make the ask. If they say yes, then you send them a follow-up email. In your follow-up email, you should include your personal statement and your CV because they should know also what you have done before and what your intentions and plans are. Don't assume that just because they know you're an international dentist, they know exactly everything that you have done. They might have no clue. And most of the times they have little to no clue about all of the things that you lived in your country. So giving them your personal statement, your CV, and a short list of the things that you want them to highlight. So perhaps it will be very helpful for me if you focus on the following things. And then you put there some bullets, perhaps of things that you have worked in the office that you consider are relevant and things that you will map with what's on your CV. So you want to make sure perhaps if that's an experience that will be reflected on your CV like it will, like a professional experience as a dental assistant, dental hygienist, for example, then you hope that some of the things that you put on your CV will be verified by that person in the letter. So yes, you have to guide them a little bit and you have to also guide them regarding examples. So it will be very helpful for me if you could talk about that example of that patient. Remember that patient that I saw the lesion and I sent it back to oral, or I suggested that he should go back to oral path and ended up being cancer. I'm just making an extreme example,
Yeah.
but just reminding them a little bit because it is through examples that people can actually see who you are better. And that's actually what makes a very special letter. So that's an excellent question. And I hope that everybody takes the following steps so they can ensure that their letters are not average. They're not, chat GPT letters because ultimately these days everybody is very busy.
Yeah.
Most likely some AI technology will be used in the process and there is nothing wrong with that. But if you don't give them prompts, if you don't give them ideas, you're going to get something standard.
Yes. Those are fantastic tips. So talking about now shadowing and networking. So these are two areas that are often like seem daunting for an international dentist. So what advice would you give to someone to just starting their networking or even looking for shadowing opportunities?
Right. So assuming that perhaps is someone that has just arrived to the US or has just decided to go out and in the world, don't get frustrated because the first step there is to think that they're going to knock a lot of doors and it's okay to knock a lot of doors. Many of them will not open. Don't take it personal. Don't feel it's something about you. There are a lot of people trying to do the same thing. And I'll tell you, 15 years ago when I first came, that was probably the first thing I learned out of ignorance and, of course, out of, I guess, the unknown. I didn't know how difficult this would be, but I also didn't know how important it will be. So I had no strong feelings attached to the fact that people will respond to me or not. So I remember I drafted an email and that I copied and I copied it as a letter as well, like a handwritten, not handwritten, but a letter that I actually hand signed letter. And I created, like a little template, a little bit about me with, some of the things that I was planning on doing, and then asking for an opportunity for shadowing. And I remembered within the first week, I gave myself a task to email that letter to 30 people per day. And I remember within that week, I sent it to like 200, I don't know, 270 people
Wow.
or something. Because what I did is like I looked through the radios and okay, I can commute. Because for where I was living, which I was living really, really far from Boston, I kind of like tie myself, okay, it has to be within 30 miles. I will take only one bus. I remember I said one bus, one train ride, and I can walk up to 20 minutes. If it fits that standard, then I will go. So of course my list was relatively long because Boston is a highly condensated area, right? So I had this list of like 200 plus people and I emailed them like daily, like 30 emails, whatever the capacity of my email was at that time. And then I went back on the letters and I did the same, like progressively. Of course, I did not send all the letters at once. And believe it or not, I only got roughly 7 responses. So imagine that could have been very frustrated. But I did it so, unintentionally in a way that I didn't feel bad about it. But now that I reflect back to it, this is really tough, right? You have to knock a lot of doors.
Yeah.
So I'm only telling my personal story for people to start by connecting with the human side, like it happens to all of us. Like none of us had like an easy path or an easier enter, or this is not easier for somebody else just because. It might be easier if you have somebody else that makes it the lobby or something like that. I didn't have that. So I get exactly what you're expressing and what most people face here. So be patient. Make the connection professional. I see a lot of people making unprofessional connections, and because through the international dentist, I get roughly 30 communications per day between emails and direct messages on Instagram. I can tell you that only about 10% of those are truly professional communications. Whether it is because this is social media or whether it is because we are very informal when we are not face to face,
Yeah.
guys, this is your professional image. This is your business card. Avoid sending emails like or messages like, "Hey, can you?" or "Can I do this?" Or just like with a direct question without introducing yourself, without telling a little bit about your path. Like, think about you're talking to a dean. And I'm not saying that everybody's at the level of a dean or a professor of a school, but you truly never know. Like I always say in my master classes, you never know what key somebody has in their pocket.
Yeah.
They might have the key of the door you need to open. And just because you're not seeing the key, you're missing an opportunity.
Yeah.
So the advice that I want people to get there is just be professional all the time. Be formal. I rather people think that you're way too formal than that you're informal because it's like when you go dress, I'd rather that you be overdressed and underdressed. So be very formal, be patient in the process. And then also seek for the opportunities, be specific with your request. And that actually ties to a point that I know what we're going to talk about, which is mentorship. These things cannot be loose. Your request cannot be loose. And oftentimes I get questions or I get actually requests that are not really a request. I want help. Okay, what is the request? I want a shadow. What is the request? So be more specific. Like I have time, I could dedicate or I'm available Monday through Wednesdays every morning because I'm currently studying English and I have several mornings throughout the week that I could come and shadow. Will be great if I could build some opportunity to learn more about the education, so the dental practice system in the United States. It would be great if I can learn more about your practice style. It could be great if I could learn more about your experiences going to XYZ school. Be very specific because when you're not specific, people are not connected to general. Like who
Yeah.
wants to and I have to reply to you, or when is it that you can come? Or do I really want to engage? Is this person thinking that they're going to come one day? Is this person thinking they're going to come 5 months? So be specific with your task, be professional,
Yeah.
and be patient because this is something that it does take some time to build in, but it's worth the effort. And I promise you, you only need one person to respond, and you only need that person that gives you that opportunity. So it's worth the effort.
That is such practical advice, Dr. Lagreca, and very positive approach to getting opportunities that way. So, lastly, are there any habits or strategies you recommend for the dentist to stay competitive and showcase your commitment to growth?
Absolutely. And I think this is an everyday effort, and it's really like a marathon. So when you're training for a marathon, the habits are really important. And doing the same thing every day does matter, which includes actually you're not going to go on your marathon and run with a new pair of shoes, not even with a new pair of socks. You will make sure that everything that you have
Yeah,
done or everything you will do when you actually are in showtime is exactly what you have practiced. So the main reason why the habits are important is because habits form character,
yeah,
and character yields results. So people are thinking of habits as something that is optional or is something that you go through phases in life. Oh, I'm gonna focus on the exam right now, so I'm gonna study. I'm gonna wake up at 5 a.m., 4 a.m. to study for the IMBD, and then IMBD is gone. They lose the habit. So
yeah,
they're losing the precious time they build in the morning on which they could be doing something else, right?
yeah,
So committing to habits is really important. And then what are some of the habits that I believe that make somebody successful here? It really goes back to stick to that commitment and then making sure that every week they're making some sort of progress.
yeah,
And the goals could be small. And I think it's fine to say, this week my goal is to make a list of programs. And I'm only going to focus this week. It's going to because I cannot go out, I cannot commit to volunteering, I cannot do whatever. So if you're restricted in time, in schedule, in resources, your goal of the week could be I'm going to sit down in front of the computer and do program search. And I'm going to do a serious program search, not internet browsing, not asking on Facebook groups or anything, a formal program search. And I'm going to commit 2 hours daily to program search, or 1 hour daily, or 5 hours per week. So I think the best thing to stay committed is to write down those goals. And I make always the example of exercising or dieting because I think a lot of people had either in some moment in life have wanted to lose some pounds or wanted to get more ripped. So when you think about going to the gym or doing any sort of diet, it has to be specific, right? You have to know that in the morning you're going to have one piece of bread with one slice of tomato with 1 cup of coffee. It's not like I wake up today and I want to have 2 cups of coffee and I'll have them and I'll still get the results. It doesn't work that way. So writing down the goals is very important. So before starting all this process, give yourself some goals that are realistic. And we use the SMART method for it. So they have to be smart, they have to be specific, they have to be measurable. So if you go Google online SMART goals, you will see what each one of the letters stands for.
yeah,
So if the goals are specific, if they're realistic, if they're accountable or something that you can actually measure, then you will know if you're making growth. So your goals have to be timed for X amount of time. So I always tell people when I meet them in calls, okay, you have 6 months ahead of you, make yourself a plan for 6 months, and then break down the plan into monthly goals, and then break down that plan into weekly goals, depending on what the monthly are. So perhaps something that is really challenging for people to do is building volunteering hours. So, okay, I have no volunteering hours, so it's very difficult for me to commit to volunteer because I live in the middle of nowhere, because there is nothing, multiple reasons, right? So not everybody lives in Boston when there are multiple opportunities everywhere. So if you're somebody that knows that volunteering hours is difficult, then you give yourself a plan. Okay, in 6 months, I'm going to do 50 hours, which means that it's roughly 10 hours per month. So if I'm going to be doing 10 hours per month, that means that in a week, I have to do at least 2.5 hours, right?
yeah,
So with that, if one week you don't do 2.5 hours, the following week you have to do 5. And it's just a matter of how you keep yourself accountable. So I feel like when the goals are not written, the commitments are not explicit. Therefore, you never know if what you achieve is done or not. And you get to the end of 6 months, it's like, oh, I only did 10 hours or I only did 15 hours because I didn't have an option or because there are many excuses. And excuses, there is an expression, the word excuses is really bittersweet for me because I remember my program director in pros, the very first time I came late, because of course, Latin, so I show up late sometimes at that time. I did change,
uh-huh,
but I remember we had seminars starting at 7:30.
okay,
Imagine 7:30. I told you already I live very far from the city. I have
yeah,
to take a train, a train, and walk 20 minutes to get to school. So it was tough, right? So the 7:30 thing was difficult. Anyways, I show up 7:32. Like I wasn't really in my world as Hispanic. It's 7:32. I'm still on time.
yeah,
So I knocked the door and he's like, "You're late." And I remember I said, "Well, it's only 7:32." He's like, "If the class is at 7:30, you have to show up at 7:20. If
yeah,
after 7:20, you're late." And then I came up with something. I'm like, "Well, but the boss was late," like, typical thing. He shut me down immediately and he said, "Gabriela, excuses are for yourself.
yeah,
They don't change the situation. They do nothing for me. I don't want to know."
yeah,
So he said that so abruptly, Dr. Vaz, that I was just shocked. And I mean, hurt, But at the same time, I understood that truly I wasn't making an excuse for making the situation better. I was doing it to soothe myself. So
Yeah.
in this process, do not make excuses. Don't try to trick yourself because all of us, we know what we can do and we cannot. We know when we're giving 100% and we know when we're not. So
Yeah.
we have to be honest. And if we're not committing 100%, we cannot expect 100% of results.
True.
And I think it's fair to expect results and expect success in all of this if you are committing 100%, but make sure it's your 100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, um, I feel like this whole conversation is little like a very guiding mentoring session, Dr. Lagreca. It's you are setting the goals are really realistic, and I think that you're the right person to talk to about realistic goals because you have transitioned from a student to a mentor and now an educator. So let's talk about that journey of your transition. Can you share what that was like for you?
So it was interesting because I was born and raised in a family of educators. I think that's the setting that I should
Okay.
always start. My parents are both, my dad is an engineer, my mom is a designer, but they both dedicated to education in their careers. So I guess I lived in a very didactic instructional home, although I didn't know that at the time. I learned that later on.
Okay.
But I was always in an educational setting. I could never picture myself as an educator in dentistry in Venezuela because nobody really makes a career out of education. You always have to have private practice. People do everything at schools part time. It's not like here that people can be an educator full time. So that's, I guess, the setting. So when I first came and my first experience here was doing an implant fellowship and later on a prosthodontic program, residency program, it is a mandatory requirement for residents to teach. So that was my first exposure to teaching in the United States. I have done some TA in my country, so I was a teacher assistant in my dental school, but just like
Yeah.
what you do on the side, like nothing really serious. But it was truly when I was teaching pros here to the first year dental students that I learned that I was learning a lot more. I was solidifying my knowledge as I was finding ways of making concepts and everything a little bit simpler. I was forced to get a deeper understanding of the concept because if I explain something to you and I make it sound easy or
Yeah.
simpler, that means that I have a deeper understanding of it. You know,
Yeah.
those professors that teach you something and they're so convoluted and so difficult to follow that like,
Yeah.
what? I believe that those are people that don't necessarily understand the thing left and right. So anyways, in that experience of teaching dental students first year, I realized, oh, I kind of like this. This is something that is making me a better resident. It's making me a better provider because I can help patients by explaining the things a little bit better. So I pick on an extra session for teaching because one session was mandatory. I pick on an extra clinical session for teaching. So basically, what that means is that I cut an extra session of clinical work with my patients in residency because I wanted to teach more.
Mm.
So that didn't go unnoticed, right? So at some point, they realized that I was doing extra more than anyone else because this was completely volunteering. I was not getting paid. And so in my second year of residency, my program director sat me and said, okay, what do you want to do? What are your plans? And where, I guess, importance of coaching and mentorship and being specific, he was like, no, you have to have a plan. You need to decide. You don't have
Yeah.
a green card. You need a sponsor. Like all of these things that came to mind because I came here and I have nothing. I have no support. I have family support, but I was not American. I had nobody in the US. I came here. I'm a first generation dentist in my family. Plus, I was the first one in my family ever leaving the country. So there was no path for me to follow. So mentorship for me has been really dear and very important. So he sat me and he said, okay, you have to apply for a teaching job because you need a green card and da 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 da. So
Yeah.
the rest is story. So I started teaching. Of course, I applied for the job, which showed to be quite competitive at the time. I thought that they, because I was a graduate there, or I was in third year, they would give me the job and that's it. No, I had to do a presentation. Then I see 8 more people. So it was competitive. But I got the job and I started working full time in 2015, exactly 10 years ago when I finished residency. And that was a very nice transition because then it allowed me to solidify my knowledge in
Yeah.
residency to apply certain things, but without the high stakes pressures of private practice, at least immediately. And then later on, I pick on a couple of days of faculty practice, which allowed me to keep the clinical side as I was teaching. So I thought it was a luxury to be able to teach. Initially, I was teaching dental students for 1 year, and I transitioned to teach prosthodontics full time in the residency program, which is a beautiful opportunity to continue the legacy of my residency, help my residents with board preparation in prosthodontics. So elevating the field has always something that has been in my mind and very important to me. So that job actually allowed me to do that. Later on, actually almost 4 years ago, I found an opportunity to transition into a next level of teaching, which is now teaching educators. And that's what I do currently. I do faculty development and faculty calibration. So I teach the faculty. I still teach in the clinics, just a little bit less, but my main role at the university is faculty development. So that basically helped me help the teachers to become better teachers so they can be better for their students. So it's really coming full circle now for me. And it's something that I hope that I can continue to do to some extent always in the future.
This is wonderful and very inspiring, Dr. Lagreca. I think mentorship clearly plays an important role, and I feel like listening to you, it's definitely a very rewarding experience to be a mentor, to be an educator. So, lastly, if you had to give one advice, maybe one word or one sentence or like anything that way, to someone who wants to step into this role in the future, what would it be?
The role of a mentor, perhaps?
Yes.
Hmm. Mentorship is tough
Yeah.
because we tend to believe that it's about what we say. So,
Yeah.
my advice is listen more than you speak.
Yeah.
By listening, you will learn different mentees' perspectives. You will truly learn that it's not about what you want for them,
Yeah.
it's not about what you have done, it's about what they need to grow.
Yeah.
And I always tell my mentees, and I make the example, I'm going to bring my phone for the example, that is just like this lantern. The mentor can only move the direction of the light, but doesn't have the battery for the light to go on. The mentee has the light. So don't be disappointed or discouraged if you meet people that are not the right fit. This is also about fit. So not everybody can be the mentor for everyone, and that's okay. There is nothing wrong about that. So give yourself grace when you feel like the relationship is not working. Just terminate the relationship without hard feelings because not everybody can be mentor for everybody. So if you're starting this process of becoming a mentor, just start small. Like pick somebody that you believe you can help in a particular area, make a small commitment, and listen more than when you speak. So ask questions. Know that the fact that you live through something doesn't mean that you're totally competent to guide somebody through something. And I think the process of licensure is the best example. There are a lot of people out there giving advice left and right just because they made it, just because they enter one program that only makes them capable of entering that program. And you never know. You never know if they enter because there was an opportunity there. You never know because they enter because they did something special and a particular thing that was attractive to admission. But that doesn't put them in a position of guiding 100 people into how to enter that same school because really that means nothing. It just means that you were able to enter that program. So for the mentee, or for people seeking for mentees, pay attention to those things too, because those are important too. And I
Yeah.
guess that was a long advice.
No, it was amazing, and I think it was very thoughtful. Dr. Lagreca, this has been an incredible, insightful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. Your wisdom and these practical tips with us today has been a great start for those who are beginning in this journey or in the middle of this journey. And before we wrap up, where can our listeners connect with you or learn more about your work?
So I'm everywhere online. So you can find me on my Instagram, the International Dentist, my website, theinternationaldentist.com. And you can find me on the school websites as well. So Tufts University and Nova, you will find my information there. But the best place to find me is truly on social media. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. If you find me there, follow me there, DM me there. I'm always connecting with people. And if it's either me or my team from the International Dentist, we'll always get back to people relatively quick. So those are the best places to find us.
Wonderful. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Inside Dentistry. If you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or share with your fellow international dentist. And you can also follow us to know more on Dental Student Society for more resources and upcoming webinars. Dr. Lagreca, I cannot thank you enough for doing this with me today. Thank you so much. And you are definitely very inspiring. And I feel like it was a great start for me beginning this journey. And yeah, I feel like you are the guiding light to all of us. And may we find the courage to, keep that battery on. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. I hope everybody can keep that energy on so we can keep the light shining.